Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the second part of the three-part exam prep series on PL-600, Microsoft Power Platform Solution Architect. I'm Monica from TechnoFocus, and I will be serving as your moderator today. We're glad to have Nicolas Georgiou with us, who will be presenting today's session. He is a Microsoft MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer on Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. He is currently based in Canada. Now I'd like to turn today's event over to our presenter. Nicolas, the floor is yours now.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicolas Georgiou from TechnoFocus. And today we're going to talk about the PL-600, which is Microsoft Power Platform Solution Architect certification. So our agenda will be Power Automate, about how to secure the model, so securing modeling. We will talk about integration and talk about Dynamics 365 application architecture, Power Virtual Agent architecture, and RPA, robotic process automation, before talking about testing and go live. This is all the things we will cover. That's a lot of stuff. So let's start. About Power Automate. So you got many options for Power Automate. Of course, you got the business rules, which is good for simple validation. Our settings are values optimized to run as part of the transaction for modifications that occur on the row. You got no ability to use related rows or connectors. That can also be configured to run in model-driven apps for basic UX operation like hide and show different fields or different parts. And the available scope, single form, all form, or table is also very important here. So this is the business rule. The second one is, of course, the Dataverse classic workflow. Primary scenario is when real-time processing is required. So when it comes to real-time, we are still at this time where we need to use the classic workflow. And Power Automate should be the first choice for background operations. But think about that. Power Automate is limited to 28 days memory. So you will have to think about how you will manage this. And that's the reason why the classic workflow will not have this kind of limit. So you will not have any 28 days limit anymore using the classic workflow. Power Automate, of course, this is now the primary choice for non-real-time automation. Supports near real-time triggering from Microsoft Dataverse, but this is not a real-time, and support for connectors and UI automation and business process flows. Also with RPA, so every part of Power Automate is available for automating. It can rely on a legacy system and run a client using the RPA to get information back or do something in the process. So you can think about the way to use Power Automate, even using the RPA. And the last one is Dataverse plugins. So these are custom logic that is used as an extension of the Microsoft Dataverse operation. That will provide ability to modify the request and response on the fly. It is able to handle complex logic, very complex logic, because that will be based on development, but that will require code developer skills and can be either synchronous or asynchronous. So the plugin is really the more advanced way to integrate advanced logic in your applications. The business process flows, you're already aware about this. This is just a guide, a kind of roadmap or a recipe that will help you to organize this guide into stages and steps. You got the stage gating, of course. You got the conditional branching. You can include multiple tables. You can switch at any time from a business process flow to another one. This is role tailored, and you can integrate automation and developers API here to extend this model. Some consideration about the business process flow. That can be used standalone outside the context of the model-driven application using the per process license. Super useful and super interesting because that will become more and more integrated into teams, for example. So let's look at this in the near future, the way the business process flow will be used out of the model-driven application. Process table is customizable and can be added directly to app navigation. The process management can be automated via API or Power Automate to start-stop process as well-advanced stages automatically. It can be included in an app or standalone. So this is what is called the immersive business process flow in Teams, for example, or directly in Power Automate. You got this page in Power Automate now where you can just use the immersive business process flow. And we were talking about including multiple tables. It can include up to 5 tables per process, related or not. But this part, the business process flow, is changing very, very fast. I know that Microsoft team is actually working a lot on this part. Let's talk now about security. So, security architecture process. Usually you have to discover first. You have to learn the client environment, okay? And the second step is defining the authentication strategy, because users are maybe coming from Azure Active Directory or maybe from Active Directory. So you will have to think about the way they will be authenticated. Maybe they want to use any external authenticator. Google or not Facebook, not at this time, but it could be Twitter, for example. So authentication strategy will be very important to map security policies and requirements to design, to initial authentication blueprint that we will need to create, and to review and modification with customer security team to apply some modification with the security team. And this part is super, super difficult because it will rely on people that don't know anything about your technology. So they need to understand how it works. And you need to be super careful with the way you will present this technology with the security teams, because they are really focusing on security and only security. So you have, and sometimes they are using different words. I mean, from a technical perspective, as an architect, I'm not always using exactly the same terms. So that will be super important in your project, if you never used it before, to think about building a glossary. So the glossary will be the place where you will make sure that you will talk about these different words in the same way, and you will share this glossary all together. That will be important with the security team. So next part will be the network security, because we are using cloud services. So maybe you will connect on on-premises data. Maybe your user will be on-prem at the office, maybe working distantly from home. You will have to think about all network security issues that could happen. So that's a very important thing. You need to think about the way people will access your system. Let's say you deploy your service in Canada. So by now, when you choose the Canada zone for Power Platform, that will be Toronto. Okay? And I got some customers in Montreal, which is 6 hours from Toronto. So there's a various way to go to Toronto using the network. You can go directly using probably traditional operators. So they will send this this DNS request directly to Toronto, but some of these operators maybe will rely on some US operators. So they will send the request not directly to Toronto, but through, let's say, New York or Buffalo or any other place in US. It's just a DNS thing. That means that sometimes some of your information may navigate through different directions. And you have to think about this from a network security perspective also. Authorizing, so everything about authorization, extracting the security-related requirements, clarifying security requirements for simplification. Remember this glossary to share with the security team at this point. Initial authorization blueprint need to be created, and you need to validate this with the business analyst and security teams before going further. That's important because that will have a huge impact on your development. So we already talked about the different layers of security, remember? So the first one is the conditional access you got on Contoso. So you can define at the highest level the Azure Active Directory conditional access, just to validate if you are coming from the right IP, for example, or the right domain, for example, another example. The second one will be the environment roles. So at the environment layer, you got the roles. So that is coming from the environment itself. So if you are going into the Power Platform Admin Center, and if you are going into your, let's say, production environment, from the settings of your environment, because I got an access to the settings right here, I will be able to manage the roles using the user permissions and manage the security roles at this point. So these security roles are the one defined at the environment layer. So you got the environment maker, you got all these different rules that are provisioned by default. Another way to add security will be at the application itself. So from the application, you will be able to share this application with, depending on the kind of application you will use. So let's say I got different kind of application here, Canvas and model driven, and these models are different. So here, for example, I will be able to share my application with people without sharing the data source. Remember, here I'm just sharing the application itself. Same from Flow. You will be able to share your flow with others from Power Automate. Next layer will be the Microsoft Dataverse security role. So at the application layer, so let's say I will go back into the solution and I will open this Contoso solution here, the Contoso component. Oh, I'm in production, sorry. So I will go back into my dev environment, go back into solution, Contoso device ordering management application here, and you got the security roles right here. So you can define your own security roles at the application layer in your solution. So this is the layer number 4, which is the Dataverse security role. And the last one is all the different connections you've got with external services that will be part of the application. So let's say you got an application that will connect on Twitter, and you will use the Twitter connector, and the user in the application will be able to provide his own security credential to Twitter. So that is just another layer of security here. So the first one is the conditional service access. So from Azure AD Premium is required. You can cover different scenarios. You can grant block access based on the user location, the user or the group or the device. So you can manage all these different scenarios right here. But you need Azure AD Premium to use it. The data loss prevention. So this data loss prevention will help you to keep things separated. Whenever you will need to develop an application that will store some data coming from your business, your business system, you don't want to allow the user in the application to share this data with another connector that is not validated by the company. Worst, a connector can be banned from the company. But if the company didn't activate the data loss prevention, they will not be able to segregate the data. So data loss prevention will be the best way to let the tenant admin define what will be the policies for some or all the environments. So they will be able to browse the different connectors, even custom connectors, and they will be able to associate these different connectors to business data or non-business data allowed. So you will be able to organize the different connectors. So how the data loss prevention works. So you have to create a policy spanning all environment that blocks all unsupported non-Microsoft customer connectors and classify all Microsoft connectors as business data. And you have to create a policy for the default environment and other training environment that further restrict which Microsoft connectors are classified as business data. So you can just create multiple policies like this. And you can even create some additional policies or exclude those environments from policies 1 or 2 above that permit certain connectors or connector combination to be used for a specific environment. So you can use and build very advanced logic, very advanced strategy about DLP using these different rules. So I'm sure you already browse this page that is data policies right here in the Power Platform Admin Center, where you can just create new policy. You can create a policy number 1, let's say. This will be the policy number 1. I will click on next. I will get the list of all the connectors. At this time, all the connectors are in default for non-business, but you can assign here some connectors as business and define some other connectors, let's say, for example, this 365 training application as block. So I will make sure that people will not be able to use this application anymore. And at no time, data can be moved between business and non-business applications. So that is super interesting. Of course, you have to continue and validate all the connectors. Click on next. See if you got any custom connectors to add and the way to classify or to organize these custom connectors. Next one is the page where you have to define the environment. So if you want to add all environment, add multiple environment, or exclude certain environment. And on the next page, you have to select one by one the different environment you want to exclude, for example, or not. Okay? And at the end, you will have to review and apply this policy. And sometimes it can take till 15 minutes to apply a new policy. So remember this. Authorization architecture. Deciding some of the far-reaching impact are of bad design. Manageability, which can become a nightmare to manage individual access. It will have an impact on the performance. It will have an impact on usability also. Cumbersome procedures to grant access, for example. It will have an impact on visibility. If it's impossible to tell just by looking at the row who has access to it. So there's a lot of examples here where a bad authorization architecture will provide a bad experience and a costly solution to maintain. So the next step will be everything about integration. So integration is about the way your application will integrate with others. So you have to identify where integration is required. And you have to lead the design how the integration will be implemented and included as part of the overall architecture. Of course, you will have to probably validate the feasibility in many different ways. So you will have to manage the proof of concept that will be required And you have to identify where these proof of concepts will be required. So again, think about the feasibility you have to validate before doing anything. So you have to lead the evaluation effort of third-party integration tools when required, ensure that the integration doesn't make the solution too fragile, and consider integrations are part of the overall disaster recovery plan. Because this is not only building this very complex solution, but also the way you will be able to restore this architecture in case you have to. So you have to always keep this in mind. What will happen if I have to use the DRP, the disaster recovery plan? So think about this, consider this. The type of integrations. You got first, the data integration, simply combining data from different sources and presenting the user a unified view. This is the data integration. And you got many examples about this. You can just grab data coming from many different sources and, trying to present this data in integrated way to the user. The second one is the application integration, a higher level integration connecting at the application layer. So this is sometimes some application that will be embedded in your solution. Let's say, for example, if you want to embed something like a Power BI report or a Power BI application in your application. This is a kind of application finally, but it can be a legacy application you want to integrate, like, for example, using RPA. So you have to think about, at this level, that the application you want to integrate got its own application lifecycle management. So you will have to care about today what the integration mean, but also in the future. You will have to follow and evaluate what will be the impact of any change of this application you want to integrate. The process integration, this is the third layer. You have multiple disparate systems, and each of those systems is part of an overall business function. So this is more at the business level, at the process level. So you have to sometimes integrate multiple processes, business processes. And at this level, the change management is super, super important because maybe some users will have to work differently because they will use a different solution. And doing this, they will change the way they were working before. So the change management will be super important at this process integration level. Maybe sometime also at the application integration, but it's more technical at the application level, usually. So at the process integration level, we are directly impacting the way users are working in their day-to-day. So why integration is needed? We have 6 common variables involved in determining the necessity of integration. Each variable defines an inherent problem, which allows for rectification through integration. So from a user perspective, a common problem in enterprises is the variety of different systems they need to interact with to perform a job. Through integration, the task a particular user needs to perform can be provided in a single, seamless user interface. The training cost to change and time to perform a task can be significantly decreased. So this can also lead to greater consistency and customer satisfaction, but you have to take care with that. Okay? Because of course, in theory, this is perfect. But when it comes to apply the change to users, this is something you have to discuss with the change management. okay, with the person that would be in charge of the change management in your project. So where data volumes are large or are changing regularly, it can be problematic to duplicate. Through integration, rather than by copying or migrating, the data can be accessed from a common place, which is more easy to manage. It is important to have access to up-to-date information about customers, for example, because customer data can be managed by different teams or as part of a regulated process. It may not be possible to use the same system to support both. Business needs, integration can make it possible to access up-to-date data in real time, ensuring accuracy every time. So it could be a big advantage here because instead of duplicating data, depending on the volume you have to duplicate, that could be very, very painful. The real time could be very, very interesting, but you have to think about the licenses and the fact that you are creating maybe a new connection to a data source, which is not supposed to provide this kind of access. And the charge can have a huge impact on the performance of the first system. Let's think about this. Some companies are buying or acquiring some solution that integrate a SQL database or let's say an Oracle database. So this Oracle database is part of the solution they are acquiring. So that means that the license to get an access to this Oracle database is covered by the application that just acquired. But this license is not maybe transferable to another way to connect to the database. So you have to think about this. And this could have a huge impact on the performance of the database itself. If you create a new application that will, let's say 500 people will use tomorrow, that could have a huge impact on the database performance. So think about this. So some functionality is cheaper to access externally rather than reproduce. So one example is address lookup, for example. So integration to an external provider can be cheaper than replicating the capability from the raw mail service source data within the system. Duplication, so consistency in data is crucial. So although this capability may be, one example of is allocated of service resource to tasks, for example. Duplication may end up in double booking, resulting in inability to deliver the service. So although this capability may be required across multiple business areas, it is not uncommon for a single system to manage the allocation and offer that consistent service to other systems, an ability that integration can provide. And reuse. Re-implementing common functionality is expensive, particularly when ongoing maintenance and regression testing of enhancement are considered. An approach where common functionality is reused rather than being re-implemented can often be cheaper and lead to greater consistency. But you will create dependencies in your code. So that could be super interesting to get a solution where you will get a couple of components that will be used like functions, for example. And many different solutions can reuse the solution provided by this specific solution, this library, okay? But that will create a dependency. So depending on the performance again, and the way you use the component, you have to pay attention to this. You have to take care about this kind of system. So the integration toolset that is available. You got the app builders and you got the code developers. That will let you create the business processes, data synchronization, Canvas app, embedded Canvas app on the app builders. And on the other side, on the code developers, you can create external processes, custom API, plugins, custom UI using the PCF, external clients, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Services, Service Bus, virtual entities, etc. And in the middle, between the app builder and the code developer, you got everything about the Power Automate flows and the custom connectors you can create. And of course, all the ETL tools that are available. Now let's talk about Dynamics 365 application architecture. So the primary categories of Dynamics apps, you got the customer engagement with the 4 services, which are Dynamics 365 Sales, which is the old CRM, the Dynamics 365 Customer Service, the Dynamics 365 Field Service about delivering, and the Dynamics 365 Marketing that was a bit part of CRM before, but now is separate as a separate solution. So you got these 4 different applications that are available in customer engagement. And on the other side, you got everything about finance and operation. So I don't know if you remember, it's something we called before Dynamics AX, kind of. Not only, but this mostly Dynamics AX. So we are talking about Dynamics 365 Commerce for everything to manage the commerce side, the point of sale and all these different things. You got the Dynamics 365 Finance, so everything about finance in your company. Everything about HR are managed in Dynamics 365 Human Resources. And you got the last one, which is Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, which is all about producing, building things. Okay? So the 4 different services, main services that are part of finance and operation in Dynamics apps. About Dynamics Sales core capabilities, because you can consider that Dynamics Sales is a kind of core system, because Dynamics 365 Sales is based on the common data model. All the required tables are already available in your Dataverse environment if you want to just activate the Dynamics 365 Sales. And sometime, every time, a lot of time, we need to create this CRM system to manage the sales, everything about sales. And you got some default processes that are already available. So you got this default process that will let you identify a lead. You can even decide if this lead will be disqualified or qualified, to move from the qualify stage to the develop stage, where you will create the opportunity, link to an existing account or a new account, link to a new or an existing contact, and get this code created. The next stage will be proposing this quote to the customer. So the quote could be accepted. And if the quote is accepted, you will move to the close stage where the order will be created. And when the order is fulfilled, you got this stage where you will be able to invoice the customer. So the invoice will be created. So this is the global sale process you got into Dynamics 365 Sales. So you got some additional application here. You got the customer insights that will give you an overview about everything about the customer. So is there any current comment, for example, or is there any comment or any problem, any trouble, any support ticket that is open and I need to be aware of when I'm looking at this customer. So this customer insight will provide a 360 degree view about the customer. The Dynamics 365 Sales Insight will be this 360 degree view about the sales in general, globally, not only about a customer. But that will provide you some information, details about the pipeline, for example. So everything about sales. The Dynamics 365 Product Visualize is this tool that will let you place the brand new product in augmented reality using a tablet or using some Google. So you can just use the 3D to place the product somewhere in the customer area. So this is super interesting, and it's part of the Dynamics 365 products. And the fourth product here is the one connected to LinkedIn. So when you are LinkedIn and you are using a LinkedIn Premium, you got a tool that will let you use the Sales Navigator to manage your action and opportunity through LinkedIn. So this is a kind of extension to Dynamics CRM that will let you interact with details and information coming from LinkedIn profiles using your LinkedIn Premium account. About the Dynamics 365 customer service. So this is a global service that will help to receive requests from customers through multiple channels. So this is a multi-channel strategy here that will let the user choose which channel he wants to use. He can use a chatbot, he can use the mobile phone, he can use the portal, he can use the mail or the phone. So using this tool, the customer service tool right here, the channel will automatically create a case in the background. So the case will be created automatically and routed to the queue, the concerned queue. This customer is a gold customer. So from the very beginning, the gold customer has been identified, and this customer request will be redirected to the gold queue. So the gold queue is defined with SLAs, specific SLAs, with 15 minutes response applied. And in this queue, you got the specific process where you got this case resolution business process that will run, where you will need to identify with an agent that will be automatically assigned in the available queue. The next stage will be the research, where the agent will have to go into the knowledge article to find the resolution or maybe create a new one. And the last one is the resolve stage, where the case is supposed to be resolved and the new knowledge article will be published or updated. And of course, at the end, the agent or the queue will keep a trace of all the history and a trace of the remaining cases that are still opened. So this is the complete process here of Dynamics 365 customer service. With Dynamics 365 customer service, you got some AI, you got some additional tools. You got the Dynamics 365 Customer Insight that will give insights about a specific customer. You got the omni-channel for customer service, just to ensure that whenever the customer start discussing with the chat and continue right after with the mail, the discussion will stay consistent. So the discussion will continue happen whatever the customer will decide to use as a channel. So it can switch from mail to chat or to phone, but at any time, we need to keep information about this customer, and this case, consistent. And the system that will be used and rely on the omni-channel to manage the different queues will be the Power Virtual Agent, which is a service built on top of botframework.net. And bot framework here is used to manage the bot, but also deeply connected with omni-channel to make sure that a discussion can happen through multiple channels, and we need to keep this consistent. And the last tool is the Dynamics 365 Customer Service Insight. So this one is about, like before with the sales, is the global overview about the customer service. Not only one customer, but a global overview about what is actually happening in my customer service. So it will totally depend on the kind of role we are talking about here. And it's really role-focused tools that are available here. So let's talk about the Power Virtual Agent architecture. So Power Virtual Agent is used to build chatbots. Okay, you can easily create and maintain bots with no-code interface. Okay, so you don't have to know about bot framework. You don't have to know about .NET. You don't have to know about the different models you got. You just have to go into Power Virtual Agent and start designing your discussion. So that's super interesting because it's really focused on the business requirement, okay, on the discussion you got with the customer. So you got two different things in Power Virtual Agent. You got the topics, which are the different topics you got in all the different discussion with the customer. If we need to talk about orders, support, deployment, support, etc. Even if you want to talk about HR, for example. So there's many different ways where there's many different topics where the discussion could happen. The second very important part of the Power Virtual Agent and a discussion is the entity. We need to recognize what are the different important words in the conversation. And it's super, super difficult to correctly analyze a human discussion because, we never exactly know what phrase the user will use and where the important information will be stored into the phrase. For example, you can define an entity to identify the cities in a phrase. So you will ask to a customer where is he based, for example, and he will maybe answer directly with the name of the city, but maybe it will say or write, oh, I'm living in this city, and by the way, it's a nice city. We don't care. I mean, from a Power Virtual Agent perspective, we need to extract the city information. So we don't care about the rest of the discussion. So the rest is really chit-chat thing. But the entity will be able to identify the city in the phrase. And because the entity is using natural language processing, it will be able to involve, and based on your bot experience, it will be able to get better. I mean, better identifying the phrase over time. So that is very, very interesting. So you got this natural language processing that is available in the Power Virtual Agent to improve the way these different entities will be identified. Super interesting. The connection with Power Automate. And when it comes to talk about Power Automate, of course, the opportunities are limitless. Okay? There is no limit to what you can do with Power Automate. So as soon as you can connect with Power Automate and trigger a Power Automation and provide some details coming from the conversation, you can connect to whatever you want. It could be the Dataverse database, it could be the SAP database, it could be a CRM system, whatever you want, and bring some information back into the conversation about maybe an order that is still on hold because a part is missing, let's say. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that can be easily automated with Power Virtual Agent. So the Power Virtual Agent will not replace the support, but it will enforce, it will help the support team to stay focused on what matters most from a customer relationship perspective. But the chatbot can be also used internally. So maybe you can use the chatbot to replace the part of your intranet. If you were using a wiki before to store information about holidays, vacations, and all these different things. You can just replace this library, this wiki library, by a chat, or just use the chat in the background and provide the links through the chatbot instead of using the search. So that can maybe really enhance your system. So the role of the solution architect here with the Power Virtual Agent, you have to consider where chatbot can be used to replace other app and user interface experience. Because that's the point. Chatbot is just a user interface where the user can type his own questions and use his own words to ask a question. Or he can use any vocal application to, just to ask something. The difference, the major difference here is when you are building application, you always have to take some decision from a design perspective. You have to choose what will be the name of the different information that will be written on the screen. So, depending on the users, some users will think differently. And you cannot provide different experiences to these users. But replacing this application by a chatbot could help you to just let the user ask question in a natural way and without any specific interface provide some information. So that's the real value of the chatbot in the way we can replace some user interface. So you have to determine the channels where the chatbot will be deployed. So will the chatbot be displayed on the web portal, or on Facebook, on Skype, or Teams? So that will be super important to know from where your user will consume the chatbot and the application. Ensure that the project team follow the principles and best practices for building chatbots. That's, again, a problem with conventions. So you have to provide guidelines, and conventions just to make sure that people will build the chatbot in a consistent way. And the last thing, but not the least, is follow the principle of responsible AI. You know that Microsoft is engaged in these principles for responsible AIs. For example, you need to make sure that the way you will use AI will not make any difference between your customers based on the color or ethnicity or age or gender. So you need to make sure that you will not make any difference. You will not ask this specific AI to make any difference between these people. You need to make sure you are transparent and to explain how the system will automatically answer. So you will not have to try to fake if it's a human behind or not. So there's a list of principles that are available on the Microsoft website. So you can just go and search for principle for a responsible AI. You will find 4 or 5 different things about. Oh, these are the 6 principles. Sorry, I was thinking about that. So the fairness. So the AI system should treat people fairly. That's very, very important. So I was talking about the differences between gender or ages, so you need to make sure that people will treat, the system will treat people fairly. Reliability and safety, of course, if you are asking for some information about the user, you need to make sure that this system will store this information in a secure place, in a safe place. So you have to think about this. Privacy and security, again, about the security of your data. And the one before reliability and safety is, if you are using AI to take a decision and people's life depends on this decision, you have to think about this. Okay, this is the kind of thing we are thinking about when we are talking about reliability and safety. So let's, for example, take this example about the car. automotive car that needs to take a decision sometime between one or other direction, and depending on the obstacle you got on your road, you have to make some choices right here. So the privacy and security, of course, especially at this time where data is so important, you have to make sure that all this data will be stored securely and will respect the privacy of the users. So especially if you are storing this data about the user, and if the user is giving to the system some details about his health, this kind of information need to be private. Inclusiveness. Of course, the system should empower everyone. So you need to think about people who got some disabilities, for example, but not only. Inclusive is, think about people that are got some autism, even if it's a light one. So this system needs to be inclusive about these people. Okay, so you need to ensure that you will not use the Microsoft system AI features against this engagement. Transparency. So the system should be understandable and need to explain why it took a decision, maybe. So if the system have to take a decision somewhere, the system will have to explain transparently why and what choice it will make. Accountability, so it needs to be responsible. So the people should be accountable for AI system, so the AI system is not responsible here. People are in charge of using and maintaining this system. So this thing about AI are super important from a Microsoft perspective. The chatbot option right here. I said that you can use Power Virtual Agent, which is one of the options and the most easiest way to build a chatbot. But you can even rely on any other options that is available. You got the Azure Bot Framework. If you still want to develop your own chatbot, you can rely on the Azure Bot Framework and start from .NET and a model, the .NET model, and start building your own chatbot. Okay? Of course, because you are using .NET or Visual Studio, or JavaScript, you can really interact in a more deeper way. So that will be a way to extend by far the system when you are sometime a bit limited into Power Virtual Agent. But Power Virtual Agent will be super easy to use. The other option you've got is Azure Bot Composer. So this is a brand new application that is available now and offered by Microsoft. So you have just it's a kind of desktop. You got a couple of desktop applications for Power BI, for example, or Power Virtual Agent. Power Automate. This one is a kind of Azure Bot Desktop for Azure Bot Framework. Okay, so you can just use the Azure Bot Composer as a client and start designing more advanced chatbot than using the Power Virtual Agent. But this is really very techy. So if you want to go into Azure Bot Composer, this is typically for developers, not for end users, where Power Virtual Agent will let you work with end users to design part of the discussion. So the low-code chatbots that are provided by Power Virtual Agent, you can just build from multiple topics and using multiple entities. Of course, you can develop a very advanced logic in your conversation. So that's super useful because at the build level, you don't really need any technical knowledge right here. So you can even start designing the conversation, the different topics with the not the end user, but with the business user. Okay, so that will be super useful because that will give you a tool to start collaborating around the conversation. It's always super difficult to build a Power Virtual Agent because you got the technical skills on one side, on the developer side, and you got, the developer don't know what is a conversation with a customer. So you have to rely on business users, and on the other side, the business users don't know anything about techniques. So you need to find a tool like a kind of Visio, and this is exactly what you got into Power Virtual Agent. It is very easy to use. And the way to deploy the Power Virtual Agent, it's super easy. You just have to click on Publish, and that's it. And voila. You just deployed your chatbot, and you just make your chatbot available to the public in one click. The only thing you have to do right after that is to define the different channels. But this is more from the technical perspective. So at this layer, at this level, the technical teams will come back and will be able to activate and manage the different channels. Of course, you got some additional features that are available into Power Virtual Agent. You got the skills management, for example. So you can go deeper into the skills management and rely on bot framework, Azure bot framework, to manage the skills. But to manage the skills efficiently, you will need to know about Azure Search, AI search. So that will be the system that will be used to manage the different skills and build or identify the skills in your company. So it's a very complex system, but it is available. So this is just an extension of Power Virtual Agent if you need something like this. Consideration when deploying Power Virtual Agent. As a solution, so first, as I said before, by default, the Power Virtual Agent will use the Common Data Service default solution, which is not a good idea at all, not a good practice. So you have first to prepare the solution and provision the solution that will be used by your Power Virtual Agent, just to make sure that it will store your topics, your entities, and all your work in the Power Virtual Agent session or in your bot in this specific solution. So when you will create a new bot, you will be able to select which solution you will use. Okay, so Power Virtual Agent is are solution aware. The Power Virtual Agent contains many subcomponents that must be exported together. I was talking about topics, entities, and many other things that need to be kept all together. So that will be very important to keep this all together in the same solution. Consider separate solution for Power Virtual Agent. So instead of using the same solution than the one you are using to store your solutions, model-driven application, Canvas application, consider using a separate one for Power Virtual Agent, because you will see that Power Virtual Agent will store a lot of different things in the database. So you will get a tons of component in your solution, and that will be better if you keep this separate from the rest of your deployment or your development. So if you plan to use Power Virtual Agent in your solution, in your project, that will be better to consider a separate solution to store all the artifacts. About the deployment, I don't know if you already used the environment variables, but that will be super useful to just define different variables when you will deploy this Power Virtual Agent. So using environment variable will be super useful to just make sure you will be able to move from an environment to another one, and even if you need to change some variable in your Power Virtual Agent system. The post-deployment manual actions required. Yep. At the end, when you will deploy the Power Virtual Agent, you still need to publish your Power Virtual Agent. You still need to add the channels. So at this time, we still need to get this action manual. Of course, Microsoft is working on making sure this could be an artifact that could be available in the solution, maybe. But at this time, there is no way to automate this kind of thing. Include actions in deployment plan. You have to think about this action in your deployment plan. So every time you will deploy your chatbot, you will have to think about this. For example, the Power Virtual Agent are created in selected environments, but you should ensure that you are using the correct environment for development, test, and production purpose when creating the chatbots. So if you are using skills, then you need to define environment variable for each skill. And about the post-deployment, the manual task may need to be performed. For example, the Power Automate Cloud Flow that are attached. So you need to configure any connection for the first time and visit the Power Virtual Agent portal and select the bot. About the skills, you need to add the value for the skills environment variable. About the end user authentication, you have to configure end user authentication in the bot so it can take actions on the user's behalf. And about escalations, you need to configure external services that end off bot escalation to a human agent, like, for example, omnichannel. And about the omnichannel, about the multi-channel, you need to configure external channels such as Facebook and internal non-Power Virtual Agent services such as Teams. So you have to be aware about this. About integration here. So the primary integration for Power Virtual Agent chatbot is through Power Automate Cloud Flow. The Power Virtual Agents can pass parameters to a Power Automate Cloud Flow and receive data back from the flow and use that data into the chatbot conversation flow. So for instance, a chatbot may handle customers' order updates and so will use a Power Automate Cloud Flow to fetch the order status from the relevant system. So the Power Automate Cloud Flow can be initiated from the all an action node in a topic that will trigger the Power Automate. About the skills, PVA, Power Virtual Agents, enables you to extend your bot using bot framework, as I said, using bot framework skills. If there are any Azure Bot Framework bot deployed, you can define those bots as a skill and embed the skill within a Power Virtual Agent bot. So you can then use the Azure Bot Framework bot from within your Power Virtual Agent chatbot through the Power Virtual Agent chatbot. A developer can also use a Power Virtual Agent chatbot from an Azure Bot Framework bot. The Power Virtual Agent becomes the skill, and the Microsoft Bot Framework dispatcher tool can integrate with the Power Virtual Agent bot. So these are some consideration about using skills. And this is something that more and more customers are thinking about. About the bot composer. The bot makers can use Bot Framework Composer to create custom component and add it to Power Virtual Agent. So for instance, by using Composer with your Power Virtual Agent chatbot, you can show an adaptive card or use a Bing search as a fallback. So this is the kind of additional thing you can create with the Bot Composer, which is the kind of desktop for Bot Framework. And the last one is the Q&A Maker here, which is part of the cognitive services. So the Q&A Maker, you can extend a Power Virtual Agent chatbot to provide answers from a Q&A Maker knowledge base. You need to add a fallback topic that uses Power Automate to run a cloud flow that connects to the Q&A Maker via its connectors to respond to questions. And about the cognitive services, which is something close to QA Maker here, the Azure Cognitive Services can be used by bot for a number of purposes, such as sentiment analysis about a discussion, image classification when the customer send an image, or same thing with the form recognition. So you can let the user post a form and provide some form recognition process right after that. So that's the kind of thing you can just integrate with Power Virtual Agent, or more globally with Bot Framework, using the Azure Cognitive Services. And you have to use, of course, Power Automate to connect and integrate all these things. About the robotic process automation, which is a division, finally, of the Power Automate. So with robotic process automation, you can do more than using Power Automate, the standard flow, finally, which was the only option we had at the very beginning with Power Automate. So there are many legacy applications that do not have a method for accessing their data or functionality except through their user interface. So the RPA solutions operate by generating a list of action by capturing the steps of a user performs in an application user interface. So the RPA solution then perform the automation by repeating the steps in the application UI, effectively simulating the user's action in software. RPA enables the automation of applications that do not have an API that can be used for such automation task. So RPA is garnering a lot of interest and attention at this time. There's a lot of people thinking about this. By automating simple tasks, RPA solution promise to lower cost while reducing error. So that's always very important to keep in mind that every time we reduce the errors, we will reduce the cost for the company. And that's the reason why it's so important to reduce the errors right here. You got two different options when it comes to work with the RPA. So when you are using Power Automate Desktop, from the Power Automate Desktop, you got the choice between two recorders. Because everything that is happening in the browser is kept secured by the browser itself, you need to deploy the connector. You need to deploy the tool in the browser to make sure that the Power Automate Desktop recorder will be able to connect with the session. So this is the particular thing with the browser. At this time, when you are using a browser, by design, the industry protect and kept protected everything that happened in the browser. So that's the reason why you will use a different recorder when you will record something that will happen in a browser and something that will happen on the desktop. Of course, using the RPA, you can mix these record actions. So you can rely on something that can happen in the browser, take an information from a browser, and switch back to an application, a legacy application, to provide the information to the legacy application. So you can just mix the usage of these two recorders in Power Virtual Agent. Opportunities for automation. So a major roadblock in automating systems and workflow can be that legacy and other third-party applications have no modern API data access that allow tools such as Power Automate to include them in their cloud flows. It is not always possible to replace the legacy application either because of difficulty of the cost to replace them. And in addition, many legacy applications are on premises, and it can be hard to link to the on-premises application and combine them with cloud services in an end-to-end automation process. So that's the reason why here we are more and more thinking about RPA. So that's the reason why the lack of modern API, the system are complex and costly to replace and connecting to on-premises system. That's what I was talking about just before. So the Microsoft approach to automation. There are many SaaS services that can be accessed with modern REST API that automation tools such as Power Automate can connect to and orchestrate to the purposes of integration and automation of tasks. So the Microsoft approach is first accelerate productivity, minimize repetitive, manual, time-consuming tasks, and create more time for the team to focus on strategic work. Automate at scale. Allow everybody in your organization to automate workflow using connectors for their favorite on-premises and cloud-based application and services, from end users, developers, to IT. And there's something new in Power Automate, the Process Advisor. So the Process Advisor is the moment where everyone in the company can start a session of the Process Advisor, record every step of the process, store the process in the Process Advisor of Power Automate, and let Power Automate give some advice about how automate this process. This is super, super powerful. If you never pay attention to this tool, this brand new tool, Process Advisor, you have to. Okay. Third, apply intelligent automation. Streamline how you work by combining the power of AI with automated workflows and business process. So that's the big thing, right? We are all trying to apply intelligence in our system. But first, let's see if we can define clearly what is the process you want to automate. And do not start with too complex automation at first. If you never experiment yet automating things with Power Automate, please start with simple processes that will, minimize repetitive, manual, time-consuming tasks first to give you more time for to focus on strategic workflows in the future. So fourth here, integrate automation. So more, of course, more securely. So enable end user to build automated workflow that comply with established policies and focus your skilled IT resources on more complex and strategic work and strategic processes maybe. So using Power Automate, a solution architect can create very innovative solutions. Okay. However, what happens when there isn't a connector available? If the service has a modern REST API, then you can create a custom connector. So you can see here that we have to start from somewhere. Is there any connector available? Yes or no? No. You have a developer who can create a connector? Yes or no? So you can create a new connector, a new custom connector, or you can automate using desktop flows. So if the connector is available, you can maybe run on a schedule. So you can automate using connector with scheduled trigger. If no, you can run based on an event or other system. If yes, you can automate using connector with automated triggers, or no, you can automate using connectors with instant trigger. So this small diagram can help you in deciding if you need to develop a custom API or a custom connector or not. Testing and go live, super important. So this part is the last part of this course. About testing, the proper testing is super important to help ensure process success. And you have to make sure that at the beginning, the scope is super clear and you know exactly what will be the trigger that will let you decide if the project is a success or not. Okay? So the solution architect is typically one of the people who know best how the solution works and can guide the test team for how to test it. But it's a separate team. This team is usually in support of the project. This is really rare that a project got its own testing team. Usually the team span over many different projects. The testing must be an ongoing effort from the first component built until go live. It can be a one-time being exercise. That's absolutely true. And that's the reason why you have to start from the very beginning testing if you are going every time in the right direction and validating on which information you are validating that you are on the right track. So that will be super interesting, super important. And keep all this information into the documentation. The reason why you choose this specific KPI, for example. The common types of test. So you got the unit test. They are performed by the app builder of code developer. So this is the developer that is running this test to just see if everything is running correctly. The functional test verify implementation meets requirement. So you need to understand if the different functional requirements are covered, but that needs to be implemented and using maybe real data or data set to validate this. The acceptance test done by users to give formal approval. So this is based on the test platform. So here we need to give this access to the end users or test users to validate the acceptance. Regression test non-changed function for regression. So if anything out of the scope of this upgrade has changed. Integration test verify everything works together, including integrated third-party services. Performance test verify which with expected peak load. So sometimes you have to stress the system a bit, and you have to get the tools for that. All these tools are available in DevOps if you need to run all these different tests. Migration test practice data migration to ensure data quality. It's always something you have to validate. The disaster recovery test. So you have to plan the disaster recovery. A DR plan is useless if it doesn't work. So you have to test it. You have to validate that the DR plan works. And the go live test, which is the dry runs on the complete go live process. That's a lot of tests, right? But these are the minimum here. The minimum, not the minimum, but these are the standard tests we are running on our project. So building the deployment plan. Depending on the size of the project, you might either own or larger working with dedicated planning team, and you are maybe an advisor. So depending on the size, you will need to ensure the sequence of events of go live are in place. Typically does not create a deployment plan, but provide input and review to the team that is in charge of deploying. And it's always better if this is not a team that knows too much about the technology, because that means that, the monkey test will work. So you are providing a deployment plan and it's supposed to work even if it's a monkey, right? So that's the idea right here. Because the deployment team will have to cover and take care about a lot of other things around the only application, especially when it comes to infrastructure and dependencies with other systems. So always looking for risk and having a plan B. It's always super important to have a revert back plan or this kind of thing. You are often the first call when the customer is unhappy with the progress of deployment. So think about this, about the support. maybe you want to contact the support team and ensure that the customers will not call them directly, but will be able to connect with you directly during the deployment, or maybe with the team. And the last, ensure the team is in place to support the deployment. So that's what I was talking about. So some common go-live problems, some common issues right here. No plan for how to roll back. So that's the very first one. And it sometimes happens. So you have to think about what will happen about the data, what will happen about part of the system that has been deployed, what will happen if I need to restart a machine or if I need to delete a specific solution in an environment. So not enough real-world testing. So customizations don't really meet real user needs, and performance showstoppers with real user load. So that's a common issue because usually in test, people are testing the solution on a specific data test, on a set of data. So they are not using the real data store. And that's sometimes one of the cause of this kind of performance issue. Migrated data is incorrect. So I was talking about data, and this is typically the kind of problem that can happen. You know, some trouble with the data, in the way data will be entered or updated. You know, many different things could happen on this side. And assumptions about end user workstation or network configurations are wrong. Always. This last thing is, you know, from the very beginning, infrastructure usually don't know exactly what kind of workstation or desktop users got. And especially at this time where everyone is working from home, so some people are using their personal material sometime. So that's really a bad situation, and you need to use some tools that are available in Azure to manage this, to validate your assumptions about this. Automate the go-live, the actual go-live. So that's a good way just to avoid any problem, any trouble here. So you can you can use automation to allow scripting and testing. So that's the best way to just automate the way test will be organized. Considering automating reference data creation allows for it to easily be run in test 2. So that's always interesting to get this process that will be used to provision the data, that will be used to validate, okay? So your data set, the data set that will be used for a test, need to be deployed, and using automation that will ensure that this data set will be deployed exactly in the same way in all the different environments. Consider automating user, teams, and business unit creation when the numbers are large, of course. Even using the PowerShell if you want, so you can still rely on PowerShell if needed. Make sure automation is well tested. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Of course, building and using automation is not a guarantee of success. So you have to validate what you are trying to automate. Perform your own risk assessment. Solution architect knows the system better than anyone. So take a look at the system from top to bottom. What could break? What might not work as designed? What if the other system goes down? Do we have the proper deployment sequence? Plan for the worst, celebrate later when it doesn't happen. Okay? And upfront time will pay off to prevent problem. So that's all about risk and assessment. So you can see here that the test part is super important. And do not forget to use the tool you got. And the first tool you have to think about is Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps propose not only to manage the repo and the pipeline, but from Azure DevOps you got an access to the board to manage the different user story and to keep the backlog running, to organize sprints. So you got this area here, and you got this access here to Azure DevOps to let you manage your roadmap and all the backlog you want to keep. And about the backlog, it's directly connected to the test plan. The different test plan you will be able to organize here into Azure DevOps. So do not forget to use or to look at Azure DevOps when it comes to organize the different plans, different reports you can get from the different tests. So you can organize whatever you want here. I mean, from a test perspective, you can organize automated tests and directly related to the different softwares you are developing or different solution you are working on. So that's the goal here of Azure DevOps, and that's probably the best place to start when it comes to think about the different tests.
And hope to see you for the next one.
Thanks for sharing all the great information. I hope our participants will really benefit from it. Don't forget to join us for the third and last part of this session series of exam prep on PL-600, Microsoft Power Platform Solution Architect. We'll see you in the next part of this training. Bye!